Well, good afternoon again. Today I'm coming to you from Herzliya, probably 50 metres from the wonderful Herzliya beach, and I'm with Barry Shaw. Barry is known as a strong Zionist, great Israel advocate and author. Barry, thank you for joining us, and you will be speaking to the Australian Jewish community via the Australian Jewish Association Facebook page.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Now, you've been very active in Israel advocacy for a long time. Why have you devoted yourself to this? Why is it important?
I had my moment in time where I was in support of two-state solution, allowing Arafat to come back, create his Palestinian state, and that was just before I was forced to be one of the co-founders of the Netanyahu Terror Victims Organization, because after he signed a so-called peace agreement, the Oslo Accords, on the White House lawn, and we allowed him back from his exile in Tunis, he started what was called the Intifada, which was a massive wave of Palestinian terrorism which affected Tel Aviv, Haifa, all of Israel, and particularly Netanyahu, where suicide bombings, car bombing, shootings were going on a massive scale. You may remember the Passover, the Pesach massacre at the Park Hotel was just one of them. I lost a worker in a suicide bombing on the Netanyahu market. I almost lost my wife on one of the double suicide bombings of the shopping mall. And we were forced to create the Netanyahu Terror Victims Organization to give psychological and physical report for some of the victims. And it was then that I began to wonder what was going on here. We allowed this guy back to start reaching out and creating this two-state solution. And instead he chose Ramallah as a launch pad and Tulkarm, another place, to be a launch pad of terrorism against us. And a friend of mine told me I shouldn't listen to what Arafat is telling the BBC in English, but I should understand what he's telling his own people in Arabic. And with the help of somebody in Arabic, I began to read, in fact, what he and the Palestinian Authority were telling the people, which had nothing to do with the two-state solution, and more on what they called a two-stage solution.
Okay. So, I mean, we still see this theme, and we see it exposed by Palestinian Media Watch and Memory TV, that what is said in English for the international media and what is said in Arabic to the Arab countries and the Palestinian Arabs can be quite different. So do you see that continuing today?
Yeah. And I hear voices, even among the Jewish communities in a lot of places from America to Australia, who suggest that, peace is only possible with the two-state solution. There are no other solutions, and really Israel is the obstacle to peace because we're not surrendering territory in order to make this possible. But I would ask the people who hold to this view, if they really believe in peace and this two-state solution, I want to tell you, if peace means peace and the recognition of the rights of the Jewish people to live in peace in the national home of the Jewish people in Israel, then you would get 100% support from all Israelis for that solution. I would doubt very much you would get even a 50% approval rating for that within the Palestinian Authority. So I would suggest to the people who believe that Israel and the Israeli policies are preventing this two-state solution to actually put the emphasis and the pressure and the lobbying on the two sides of the Palestinian political divide. And what I see as an Israeli Jew, that the Palestinians declare that if Israel surrenders territory, which legitimately is ours, to create a Palestinian state, and they will, both sides of the political divide, would accept the notion of the Jewish state of Israel and agree to live alongside us in peace. Once you have that, you would have an overwhelming support, as I said, for the Jewish people. I doubt whether you would get an overwhelming support from the Palestinian people.
We were talking earlier about the education system in the Palestinian schools, and you made a comment. Do you think that's possible, given what has been taught to the children, the Arab and Palestinian children?
Well, no, because as we see, there's rampant indoctrination and propaganda going on from the kids up that Israel doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. This is where you see this two-stage solution taking place. You look in their school books, even the ones on the United Nations so-called refugee camps, that you don't see Israel mentioned at all. It's only Palestine.
So by two-stage, do you mean firstly establish another Palestinian Arab Muslim state, and secondly, what's the second stage?
Well, you've got the first stage already. The first stage was the Oslo Accord.
Okay, what's the second stage?
The Palestinian Authority was allowed to take what is called Area A and Area B according to the Oslo Accord. So they're already there. They already have a capital in Ramallah. By the way, Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip, so they have another capital in Gaza City. Now they're asking for a third capital, i.e. Jerusalem. So it's the salami process. I talked about what they call the two-stage solution. Actually, it's been the three-stage solution. They're now in stage one. Stage two is what's called 67 borders. Right. And stage three is, if you listen again to the Palestinian message, their leaders to their own people, stage three is to liberate the rest of Palestine beyond 67. What do they call Israeli Arabs? The Palestinian Authority, not just Hamas, the Palestinian Authority call Israeli Arabs, i.e. Arabs living in Israel, as full citizens of Israel with full religious and civil rights, the Palestinians of the interior. The Palestinians, or the Palestinians of 48. So once you have the 67 solution, the ones that people naively say, if only Israel withdraws to 67 borders, or we're going to have peace and harmony and kumbaya will break out. No. The language when we then have to liberate the rest of Palestine and liberate the Palestinians of the interior.
So that's essentially elimination of the state of Israel.
Of course, that's the ultimate aim.
So are there alternatives? Do you see...
However, I belong to a forum where we do discuss behind closed doors what we call alternatives to a failed two-state solution. And there are alternatives.
Well, we want to start that discussion in Australia because there's no one articulating those alternatives at the moment.
Well, another reason you've got to do it really, because let's put it this way. How long has the two-state solution been pushed? Since probably 67? I mean, if something's been pushed for 50 years and it's not making any progress, so how long do you have to be pushing this dead camel down the sandy path until you realise it's dead?
Okay. Now, just to change subject a little bit.
Yeah.
You were at Beersheba.
Yes, I was.
As we were.
Yeah.
Recently for the commemoration and celebration of the Anzacs role in World War One.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that Barry Shaw has written a book on the subject, focused on the history of 1917. So do you want to make one or two comments about the significance of this event?
Yeah. 1917 was a magical, you could even call it a miraculous year. But you're right, I was in Beersheba, and I want to tell you the participation of 3,000 Australians, and I think, understand it was 500 New Zealanders who came over to Israel for commemoration events was very moving. I want to tell you there is a remarkable bond that it got even stronger this last week or so with the participation of the Australians and the reception they received from the Israelis. I was very proud to give huge debt of gratitude to the Anzac soldiers for their sacrifice 100 years ago. And in fact, in the book you referred to, 1917, From Palestine to the Land of Israel, I pay a hefty tribute to the Anzac soldiers, not only to the soldiers, also to their horses in the book. And I detail some of the heroism that they participated in. But this leads to another claim. Why I called it 1917 From Palestine to the Land of Israel? A lot of people don't know this. But in fact, some of those who fought alongside the Anzac soldiers and the British soldiers were in fact Palestinian Jews. Palestinian Jews that had been recruited into the British Army, who fought and took over, for instance, a bridge over the River Jordan, so the Australian light horse could ride across and take assault on what became the Jordanian side of the. Also, there was a famous Palestinian Jewish spy ring, the Nearly spy ring.
Ah, yes.
And they the ones that, in fact, gave a lot of directions to Allenby, who passed it over to the General Chaval and the other generals, the routes to take and why to take and how to fight the battles that helped them ease the way through the Palestine campaign. And I make this point because the ones who fought alongside the British soldiers and the Anzacs and some of the Indian troops were Palestinian Jews. And if you look at it from the perspective of the book, there wasn't one case of any Arabs who rose up to liberate themselves from the yoke of the Ottoman Turks of that time. So if you talk about the liberation of Palestine to become the land of Israel, it was fought by the sacrifice of your brave Australian soldiers and other Christian soldiers, but also the Palestinian Jews, where the Arabs never lifted a finger this side of the River Jordan to do anything to remove the Turks from their power that they had over here for 400 years.
We as part of our tour, went to the Nearly house, where all the discussions were held. And for those of you who visit Israel, it's a very interesting aspect of history to look at. Barry, I want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
You've learned a little about the Australian Jewish Association. I hope one day, in the not too distant future, maybe next year, you'll find your way to Australia and we can get involved in some joint events and speaking in both Sydney and Melbourne.
I hope one or two quite original ideas to contribute to that, and I look forward to it. I want to thank you, David, and your organisation, AJA, for all you're doing in support of Israel. So I look forward to speaking to your audience, meeting some of your audience at an opportunity, maybe next year, as you say, coming to Australia and meeting with you and talking to you and giving you some ideas of some of the facts and the truth here in Israel, and see it from a genuinely Israeli perspective based on real politics.
Thank you so much, and I hope next time we meet it'll be in Australia and we'll do just that.
Thanks for everything you do.
Okay.